Welcome back, everyone, to the Chip Lunch podcast. I'm back after a couple of weeks off. I was in America.
Yeah, you look very tanned.
Do I?
No.
Yeah, well, we'll leave our skin tones for another,
You should be
for
wearing
another
like
discussion.
a Hawaiian shirt, or like looking like you just.
I didn't go to Hawaii.
It doesn't matter. Holiday mode.
I bought this shirt is from representing an area of California, Long Beach.
Ooh,
So
Nice.
lovely.
yeah, get off your high horse.
I'll try not to trip on the way down.
Welcome, Braden. It's lovely to have you on the podcast as usual. Thank you for
Lovely to be here.
filling in the
Yeah, Ethan and I got to run the asylum for the last 2 weeks.
the Chip Lunch asylum.
Yeah, it was
Let's
very
stop
fun.
talking and introduce our guest, though.
Yeah.
Amber, welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having
Very
me.
excited to have you on. I feel like you just speak very articulately. So
Really?
yes.
It's probably the teacher in me.
Yeah.
My kids at home probably wouldn't say I speak articulately when I'm
what would they
in a
say?
rave or something.
in a rave, like a party,
No.
in a rage.
No, I didn't
Oh.
want to say rage because that sounds like really aggressive, but a rave where I'm, raving on about something.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you were at like a big music festival or in a factory in a
I do
warehouse.
like music.
That kind of music.
Yeah, no.
No,
That
definitely.
type of music.
How would your children describe you if it wasn't articulate?
Oh, well, on a good day, I think they'd probably say I do okay.
Magnificent.
No, I
just
don't
wouldn't want to
know.
say it.
I don't know about magnificent. No, but they would probably say I do all right.
Marvelous.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I've heard those words. I mean, I don't even get called mum anymore. I just get called Ambs.
Oh, do you? Wow.
Yeah.
Shorten your name.
Yeah,
to that
yeah.
Too.
So we
That's
get
interesting.
So Rich gets Rico, and I get Ambs, and so that's like
Wow.
everybody calls us that, including our children
Wow.
and
Oh,
all
that's
of their
interesting.
friends. So Rico and Ambs.
I like the friends. That's cool. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'd be disappointed if my children started calling me by my name. Because like my brother-in-law does that to my wife's dad too. He's like, Eric. I'm like, it doesn't sound like. It sounds like you're talking to your mate rather than your dad. But,
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it really. It's not that bad actually, to be quite honest.
Okay.
Well, do you
It's
not
kind
even
of-
notice anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably don't notice, Braden. That's probably the truth of it all, really. It's just become
Just get
the
called
norm.
something.
I'd prefer to be called Ambs than, she's a boomer. That's just because that's what I get a lot of the time.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, we get, the boomers.
The boomers.
Yeah, the boomers.
The
Like
boomers
if-
wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, they just, yeah.
That's really funny. So they're just like in another room, like, oh, the boomers.
Oh, yeah. No, they're not often in another room either. Like they're with us and they'll just say it straight to us
Really?
because, we'll ask a question that perhaps is not quite au fait with. And it's just, the boomers.
Could you
Wow.
turn it into like 6 white boomers? You're like, yeah, we're part of that Australian Christmas song.
I keep trying to tell them I'm not a boomer, but
Yeah.
clearly.
It doesn't matter if you're like over the age of 20 or
Yeah, well,
25. You're
One of
a
my
boomer.
friends' nicknames is Boomer, and I'm pretty sure he's not even in his mid-30s.
You're a boomer. Anyway,
Yeah.
Amber, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Let's ask the first question, which is, how do you like to have your hot chips?
Oh, look, chips anyway is good, really,
Oh.
isn't it? Like, they've got to have salt, obviously, but.
Mhm. Oh,
you
hang
know,
on. What kind of salt?
I know you're going to push me on what kind of salt, but
Yeah.
I just, if they come with salt, whether it's salt or chicken salt, I will eat them because they're chips.
Yeah.
you
I'd
know?
like to call out Kath from the last podcast when she's like, oh, is it regular salt or chicken salt? Fine if you like chicken salt. It's salt. It's not regular salt. It's just salt.
Salt.
Chicken salt.
The only reason you call it regular salt is because chicken salt was
Is
invented
better.
later.
Yeah.
You may think it's better, but it was invented later. So
I'll eat them anyway they come.
Really?
So, yeah.
Any sauce or anything? Like you're happy with the sauce you have?
No, the salt's good.
Oh, I meant sauce.
No, just the salt.
Oh, no
the sauce.
salt.
Yeah, the salt is good.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I don't think. I mean, if it's got sauce on it, I'll eat it. But we had chips the other night, and they had Parmesan cheese melted over the top of them.
I've had
and
that
they
before.
were pretty good.
Where was that at?
That was at Sylvania, our house.
Do you want to put that on the podcast?
No, I probably don't.
Yeah, we might bleep
We'll
out
bleep
your
that
address.
out.
I was like, wow, that's a cool name for a restaurant. Oh, wait.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no, probably edit that part
Hang
out.
on, I'm just going on Google
Just
Maps.
beep it out,
Yeah.
Dave.
She lives there? Oh my gosh. Cool. So you're pretty. Do you get accused for being a boomer because you can't decide what kind of chips you want?
No,
What?
no. They would just come.
I had some of Braden's chips today for lunch and they were terrible.
Terrible.
No, yeah, they weren't your fault. They just were
Terrible.
like.
I don't think
because
were
they
that
had
bad.
chicken salt.
No, not so much. It's just like.
Yeah.
We won't,
Look,
we won't say
I'd
where it
rather-
came
Let's be
from.
real. There's good chips and there's bad chips.
100%.
Yeah.
Like there's some, You've got to decide your place that make really, really good
Yeah.
chips.
I just think
So-
terrible is a big call.
Sorry.
on that.
It's a strong
Terrible
word,
might be a
isn't
bit
it?
too tough.
I don't know. I go a bit too far on the I don't know. I'm a bit sick of places like Grilled who are like, yeah, this many chips for like $12, and you're just like, no.
Yeah, especially when potatoes are so cheap.
Exactly. Oh, it's ridiculous.
Mm.
Well, all
Anyway.
prices have gone up lately. Inflation.
Oh,
and
wow.
blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
we're really getting
I
interesting
don't
here.
think potatoes have got any more expensive.
I was about to talk about more where you lived because I looked it up on that, but I won't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
I was surprised that is used to be a racing track somewhere in Victoria. That's what
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
there
Now we
you
can
go.
bleep that word out 3 times.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a good point. Sorry.
Dave's, just give more work for
yeah,
Dave.
yeah, Dave, need you to bleep up. We'll find
Every
some-
time he says that word starting with that letter.
sorry, I did that again, but we'll bleep it out. And I shouldn't say that. We should just cut the whole thing out because everyone's going to figure out what it is.
No, I want Dave to have to beep it.
Okay, yeah, beep it, Dave.
Oh, that's cute.
The next question is, how did you become a Christian, Amber?
So,
Amps.
it's all right, you can call me Amps or Amber, whatever kind of comes your way, really. So, I grew up in, I suppose, a nominal home in terms of my parents were open to Christianity in that they weren't against it, but it wasn't kind of their thing. They'd experienced a family tragedy that had sort of turned my dad right away and made my mum kind of question where she stood with it all. So it wasn't something that was a big part of our family life, although, Sunday school was something that we were sent to, I think, because, they wanted us to have an opportunity to, like they used to say, explore religion for ourselves.
Yeah.
But, I think also Sunday mornings, it was great to send your kids off to Sunday school because then you could have the morning at home and
Yeah.
it was free babysitting, dare I say. But I suppose that was sort of the start of, seeds being sown for me. I was really interested in scripture at school, so I, absorbed what I learnt there. And then in year 6, I had a beautiful year 6 teacher. And of course, back in the day in a public school, she was a Christian and there were no rules around what you could do or couldn't do in terms of religious freedoms. And she used to run a Christian group before school. Which she invited us to, and when I say us, like invited the students to. And I jumped on the opportunity because I loved her as a teacher and I loved the thought of spending more time with her and learning, what it was that she believed in. So I remember distinctly sitting on a staircase at school with her one morning, praying the prayer to invite Jesus into my heart. And so I wish to this day that I could make contact with her to say to her, thank you for taking the time to share Jesus with me, because I think, she was really the one who really opened my heart and mind to Christianity and to the gospel. And so I look back now and I think, all the time that is now being taken away from students having opportunities in school to interact with the Bible and have, scripture and ISCF and all of those things. Like, it's being pulled back and pulled back and pulled back. And yet I think it's, we know it's the time when hearts and minds are so able to be open to God's word. And then, it was hard. I was in year 6. It was sort of towards the end of year 6. Left primary school, went to high school, different kind of kettle of fish. I'd sort of prayed the prayer. I didn't really have a church connection. I sort of floundered around a little bit, sort of trying to find my way with what that actually meant. And then some friends, I made new friends in high school, and obviously God had it all in hand. They were Christians, and they went to Sylvania Anglican Church, and they invited me to come along. And, there was a beautiful older couple at the church who ran, for want of a better word, like a youth group. It wasn't, a big youth group per se, but it was a group of young people who were Christians. They were Christians. They were eager to nurture us and develop us in our faith. And so they, the church there became my family home. And, I was then fortunate enough to marry and raise my girls there before. So I had a long time in that church community with people who will still and are forevermore foundational people in my life, and people who I would consider to be my Christian parents in many different ways. So
well, you just mentioned parents there. What was your actual parents' reaction to like ever-growing commitment to church and being a Christian?
I was going to grow out of it.
It's a phase.
Yeah, it's a phase. It was a phase. As far as they were concerned, it was a phase, and I would grow out of it. And not that they were they were not against it. They were very happy for me to go because it was a nice place for girls to go to. It was safe, and there was a recognition that it was nice people, and they did good things, and I was happy, and I made good friends, and so I was the youngest of 3. My brothers had kind of posed their challenges to my parents, and I was pretty easy, and I was a good girl. I wanted to be good. I didn't look for opportunity to rebel. Like I wanted my parents to be happy with me, and I was a people pleaser. So that lent itself to me wanting for them to be happy with what I was doing. And so I think I was there, and I was enjoying it, and they were happy enough with that. So
And what was so you kind of, like you said, prayed the prayer when you were in year 6. Did things start to change from there, or because you were saying that you were moving around a little bit or weren't really sure what to do in early high school, did that kind of fade off, do you think? Or it's amazing that God just puts these people in our life, right? Like the year 6 teacher.
Absolutely.
But did you think you probably, my question is, did you go from strength to strength from that point, or was it kind of like a bit more of a gradual process?
I think probably, and the time frame was probably not that far apart, like in that, prayed the prayer, still had time with that teacher at school, so she was quite nurturing and encouraging me along. And, I remember her buying me books or giving me, direction as to what to read in my Bible. And so I was quite motivated. I guess when I left primary school, went to high school, I sort of found myself in that sort of like, well, what do I do now? And how, how do I continue to live out a Christian life? And I probably spent maybe the first 6 months of high school trying to find my way, which you do anyway. You go from, being the big fish in the pond to going back to being the small fish in the big pond.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of in that zone, checking out, new friends and how do I kind of work this. And, I spent a bit of time with the group of friends that I had in primary school, but I think I could quickly see that they were not the friends that I would continue developing friendships with, simply because, they started to really get involved in stuff that just didn't feel right to me. So I guess in a sense, God's Spirit was working in me enough that I felt prompted by what other people were doing, that it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. It didn't kind of tempt me to kind of go, oh, I want to do that to fit in. It kind of made me go, actually, I don't really want to be doing this, so I need to sort of find a different way here. And I don't know that was necessarily a conscious decision going, I'm a Christian now and I can't do these things. I think, it was God working in my life. When I look back now, it was God working in my life and just changing and shaping me and I guess leading me in a different direction. So, so I ended up, fortunately, by the way that things worked out, the friends that I was friends with in primary school, who I went to high school with, they were in different classes to me. I was in classes with other people. There were a lot of people in those classes that I started to spend more time with. And just so happened that a couple of them were Christians and went to the local Anglican church and were just like, oh, you should come along. And it was just like the doors opened. And I think from there, in terms of my motivation and my understanding, I was just eager to learn and eager to understand. And I think it just took off from there, really, in many ways. So,
what primary school and high school did you go to?
So I went to Sylvania Heights Primary School, and then I went to Sylvania High School. And where do I live now? In Sylvania. Have I left Sylvania?
On occasion.
I come to church at Kirrawee now.
Which is like a suburb away from Sylvania.
I work at Hurstville.
Okay. So cool.
Okay. Yeah.
What you've spoken about kind of God working through your life especially in high school, and you said that you moved away from a particular friendship group into another one because they were Christians. What about just your experience of high school? Was it reasonably positive, or we often like to talk about that because we kind of started Chip Lunch talking about our experiences in high school. So that's why I'm asking the question.
Look, it was fairly positive in that I had a really the year group that I went through in, there was like 178 of us. It was the biggest year group, I think, almost that they ever had at Sylvania High. It was a big cohort for the school. And look, there was, all extremes of characters like there are in every school. But the group of friends that I had, we had a pretty core group of friends that we went through. In fact, I'm still in touch and good friends with a number of those girls, that I would still class as my closest friends. But we very quickly became pegged as the dios, which I don't even really know what it must have been diode, but it was some sort of computer component because, we were we were academic and we were, you know, focused on our studies and, you know, we were good girls per se as far as they were concerned. So
Dios.
yeah.
That's a pretty crap name.
I know, but
know,
you know
it's
what?
not
It
the
was
worst
just
thing you could
no,
Makes you
it's
think of-
not.
Yeah, like,
I think one of
true.
the other groups was the dance group because they were a group of
dancers.
girls who did dancing.
Ah,
So we used to call them the dance group. Yeah, so you know, pretty lame, really.
I was like,
back
what's
then.
going on at this school?
I know. So
So did they shorten diodes to dios?
yeah, we just got
It's very Australian.
yeah, I know.
But okay.
So I guess
Sorry, yeah, keep going.
Yeah. You know, typical kind of
Yeah.
high school, the in people, the out people,
Yeah.
I don't remember. I think, well, my brothers had been at the school before me.
Yeah.
My
Oh,
eldest
carving a path of destruction.
well, yeah, and we were very different people, very, very different people. But my second brother, who was just 11 months older than me, he was a troublesome character. And
Can you tell us one of the stories? What did you do? What did you do at school?
yeah, he was regularly in fights, and he was down
okay.
the creek smoking. And
Okay, I meant
you
more.
know,
I wasn't trying to.
I think
trying to blow him up. I was just
Oh,
like, if he
no.
did something funny at school.
well, he probably did,
Yeah.
but like he was troublesome, and I think, you know, people were very scared of him, and so when I came through as his younger sister, I think people, the teachers particularly, would go, "Ah, you're his sister," and I'd go, "Yes," and they go, "You're very different," and I go,
Breathe sigh of relief.
yeah.
Exhale.
But
For
I
a
think
reason.
I think from the student's perspective, I feel like people were like, she's Jamie Snow's sister. And so I think I almost had like this protective capsule around me that people wouldn't.
Oh, a bit of a rep, a bit of reputation. Your
Well-
brother will come after you if you do it.
Well, I don't think he would have ever said that, and he was just as good as laying into me as he maybe was to others. Like there were no prisoners taken at our house. Like, you know, treat him mean, keep him keen, and you had to learn to stand up for yourself. So having two brothers, it was, you know, it wasn't like I was treated like the precious girl. Like it was all strength to them.
If these guys had reputation, is that one of the reasons why you were like, oh, I'm going to be... Do you think that's why you're like, I'm going to be the good girl?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Look,
I'm not trying to be
no,
pop
no.
psychologist here. I'm just asking the question.
I mean, interestingly, both of my brothers were adopted.
Oh, okay.
My parents, they had a baby, and he died when he was just before his second birthday. So that was the tragedy that I alluded to that sort of really rocked their faith.
Right, okay.
And then they were told they couldn't have any more kids because mum was not able to fall pregnant again. She just had some, you know, woman's problem that meant that it just wasn't happening. And so they adopted two boys. And then lo and behold, mum got sick just after they adopted my second brother. So he was only a couple of months old, and she was really sick. And then they kind of were going, well, I don't really know what's going on here, because of course pregnancy wasn't on the cards because she was told she couldn't have kids. And she was pregnant. So that was me. So so look, and we were never ever, it was never that I was their child and they were adopted, and it was never ever a secret. Like, we knew right from the outset, and in fact my brothers would still say now, well, at least we were planned. So, but look, maybe genetically different, because of course we were raised the same, and I we had the same nurturing, and it was the same environment and the same expectations, the same rules.
Just different personalities.
Just different personalities.
Same suburb.
Same suburb. Yeah. So I kind of feel, you know, it genetically, it just may have been that predisposition.
Yeah.
But, you know, boys, girl,
Yeah.
lots of factors that could have been a part of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the first good girl in a family where there's rebellious. But I don't think it was things that I observed in my brothers that made me think that I needed to be a good girl, because really the teenage stuff was really when I guess their behaviour flourished into rebellion and doing the sort of stuff that they would be doing.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
Sorry, did you have a question, Brad? I thought you were
I can.
gearing off. You go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Now think of one.
No pressure.
No pressure. So you were going through high school. Did you know what you wanted to do leaving out of high school? Did you do HSC?
Yeah, I was just set from right at the beginning. Always loved kids. I was, you know, the youngest in my family, but when we, you know, things that my parents were involved with, they had friends who had younger kids, so I was always the one looking after the little ones. If there was a baby in sight, I had it in my arms. I would scoop up, you know, anybody's kids and entertain them. I loved little ones. So there was just no question I was going to do early childhood teaching. That was where I was heading. And so, you know, did my HSC and was straight into uni doing early childhood teaching and continued along that path. So, yeah.
You're right. And where did you train at?
I went to the Institute of Early Childhood, which was at Waverley at the time.
Pretty sure my mum trained there as well.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, claim to fame, I was in the same year as Greg Wiggle. And the Wiggles were, you know, trying to launch when we were at uni, and we used to just laugh because we were just like,
look at these idiots in different coloured skivvies.
What are you thinking? Because they were three of them did early childhood teaching. So Murray and Anthony were 2 years ahead. Greg was in our year.
Yep.
And so Jeff was asleep.
Jeff was asleep
in the classes.
Yeah, he was never there. He didn't go there, but he was a ring-in and a lot older. He didn't wake up, but they.
Oh my God, Jeff.
Yeah. We should have got skivvies for this.
Oh wow,
that would have been.
Yes. I would have been great. I mean, if you brought them, I would have put it on.
Yeah, but I just always knew that that's what I wanted to do. Lovely. So it was a couple of, I think most of the time when we were at Waverley, it was the Institute of Early Childhood. It became Macquarie University, and when we graduated, we actually graduated at Macquarie University.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So.
And then where you obviously were going for early childhood. Where did you go after that?
So I worked, my first job was working in a long daycare centre at Padstow, and then I worked in a preschool at Ramsgate, and then I ended up at Innerborough for a number of years in between having family and I'm now working outside of early childhood, but kind of still in a teaching capacity. So I now work at Danebank in learning support. So I'm not effectively responsible as a teacher, but I get to teach. So it's the best job ever. So I have all care but no responsibility.
Perfect.
That's a really quick fast forward through like the majority of your career.
Yeah, that's okay.
I mean,
you can.
I don't want to guess how many years it's been, but
yeah,
I might get in trouble. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yep. What? How do you think that your faith impacts you being an early childhood teacher? Because I would just love to hear this answer, but I
think that it's not a you'd never go into it as a profession because you wanted to earn lots of money, because it's definitely not. I mean, that's teaching, probably nursing as well, really. It's definitely a relational job, and I think probably that also attracted me to that kind of profession. So, but I think as a Christian, I mean, interestingly enough, each of the places that I worked were either based in a church or had some church affiliation. None of them are except for Innerborough, but the other jobs that I worked in were managed by the churches, and then Innerborough we were allowed to be overtly Christian. It was, classed, well, actually when I started there it was overtly Christian. I don't feel that it continued on that path, but that's probably a whole topic of not necessary to cover.
We'll bleep it out. This is a long
More bleeping, Dave.
Just like a new conversation.
Yeah, but I think that, like when I reflect on all of that, like I sort of see some, I think relationally I was able to have great relationships with people, and I hope that in time when I come across those people in life that perhaps people would have noticed a difference, that I wasn't just a teacher that perhaps cared about their kid, but that I actually was deeply invested in relationship and,
Quite similar to your teacher in Year 6, I'd assume.
Yeah, probably.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, thanks, Siri. What is this? I don't think we said anything like Siri, but that's fine. Not a problem.
She's a little bit temperamental.
To jump back a little bit, at the same time you've gone through uni, how was it being at church and being a young adult?
Good question.
After, obviously, you've got a core group of friends and you've gone through youth and you've graduated high school.
Yeah.
How was church life during that time?
Well, church life was great because we the two churches in Sylvania, it was deemed that they weren't viable to continue. So there were two Anglican churches in Sylvania. There was one down at the bridge, and then there was our church up at Sylvania Heights. So it was like St. Mark's and St. John's. And, the powers that be had discussion and conversation about the fact that, financially for the Anglican Church, it didn't make sense to have two Anglican churches operating because actually that money could be used if property was sold, et cetera, to take out to areas where more churches were needing to be built. And it did make sense because I think dwindling numbers, congregations were, like if the congregations were combined, it would mean, we would have a bit more of a viable congregation. I mean, I was young at the time, so I don't know any of the ins and outs, but I know enough to say that, they thought it would be great because the young people would be so much more flexible to change. So the first congregation that they amalgamated was the Sunday evening congregation. And we were quite small up at Sylvania Heights at St. John's, and so they thought it would be great if they shipped us down to St. Mark's. and we were just like, oh my goodness, like there's all these young people. So we went from this very kind of small core group of young people down to quite a thriving youth group.
Wow.
That, we sort of fell into. There may also happen to have been some young men there that there hadn't been at the other
as well.
kind of prospects. And so, it was a win-win. We were sort of getting to go to a bigger, thriving youth group. And, that actually was really encouraging, and it was great. I think sometimes, you can find yourself in small church context and, you kind of go, I wonder whether there's other, like maybe this is really all the young people there are that are Christians.
Yeah.
So, it really sort of opened up this whole world of, going out for coffee after church on a Sunday night and, a big youth group on a Friday night and, just lots of fun activities. So it sort of amplified that whole, we can go out and have fun together and do stuff and have fellowship and friendship and all be part of a church community together and grow in our faith. And, we had house parties and we went off to Katoomba Youth Convention and we did all of those great things. We went off to Black Stump, which was such a big event at the time. In fact, we were talking to our daughters about it the other week and they were just a bit like, what's that about?
The boomers are talking about a festival.
Yeah, the boomers are talking about a festival. So, it was, I think it just opened my world in terms of, and I can't remember, that probably happened when I was in about year 9 or year 10.
Good time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was it was a good influential time.
Yeah.
There were older Christians in that youth kind of group as well, and there were older Christians in the evening church congregation as well. So that made a difference.
Yeah.
That made a big difference because we sort of had a ceiling limit of ages in our kind of core youth group, people not much older than myself.
Yeah.
And, this gorgeous couple that used to run our youth group, they were amazing, but they met and married late. Yeah. And so they were sort of in their mid-40s and had little ones. And so while you sort of would still learn from them, and I even to this day, when I think of them, my heart just sings for the fact that they took that time to invest into us. They were that bit of a gap that probably...
Well, you were missing a few age groups or
you were missing,
life stages, I guess.
were. We were missing those life stages and, I mean... I'm just reminiscing as well about, we did then, the youth group leader that we had, we did have a guy and I just remember that they used to, I don't know why, and you can cut this out if it needs to be cut out, but for whatever reason, at that stage, they just felt that they needed to have these sex forums constantly to talk to us about,
shopping
and and about what was appropriate and when you're dating and so I just remember there being these panels, and I remember them being many of these panels where they'd invite older people, but they were parents of people that I was friends with or older people. And, you used to be able to put your question in the question box. And then...
Nothing like anonymous questions.
And then the following week, there'd be a night where they'd have this panel. And either they thought we were, super sex crazed, I don't know. But, I remember, that this would be a reminiscing theme that would continue to come up, and so I remember sitting there horrified thinking, don't want to hear what you've got to say about that stuff. Like I was like, la, 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 la. So, yeah, I think when we then found ourselves mixed amongst younger people and people that, like you said, that were just that little bit above us, you know, they would have been people that I would have asked questions to, who I would have modelled behaviour off because they were just a bit closer in age. I mean, I have the utmost of respect now for those older people in my life, and I can see how God used those people. And, you know, certainly at different stages of your life, you know, see like they'd had kids. And so when I had my own kids, they were wonderful models that I looked back at and went, yeah, I remember them doing things like this. And so.
That's lovely. It's rather funny too. So is that when you met Richard?
That's when I met Richard.
Is that when you went? Was he in the other youth group?
Yes. So he was a St Mark's boy, and I was a St John's girl.
Yeah. It sounds like when the like private, you know, with the
two gangs.
Yeah, the private schools. Oh, you sound like talking about Greece.
I'm talking about West Side Story.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Greece.
No, I don't know. What are the two gangs? It's the Sharks and the Jets. Is that West Side Story?
I think you know more about West Side Story than I do.
I've never watched it, but I know that.
You know that one? Would you say you're a shark or a jet?
Can I say I haven't seen West Side Story?
Either right. Okay. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know who the gangs are in Greece. I have seen Greece. I don't remember. The Pink Ladies?
Yeah.
The Pink Ladies.
And the guys with the car. I forget what they're called.
Anyway, two rival
gangs. The Thunderbirds or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. It's something like that, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Right, the gangs.
Yeah.
I searched that up. Sorry. Tell us about you met Richard.
Yes,
there.
I met Richard. He was actually, he and John Mungden were both in that youth group.
John and Dee have been on the Chipmunks
podcast.
I
know, I've seen their podcasts. So John was actually a youth leader at the time, and he had an amazing influence upon my faith. He was my leader, and that might also allude to the fact there was a little bit of an age gap. So, you know, it doesn't matter now, but back then it was a little bit scandalous. So Richard... Scandalous. Well, I was 15 and Richard was 21. So, you know, that we started dating when I was in the beginning of year 10 at high school, and he was 21 and an apprentice, and so
that would be considered a scandalous.
Well, it was a little. It was a little. So, you know, people were a bit like, "Oh, you got a boyfriend and he drives a car and he's not at school." And
is he part of the Scorpions? That's the gang in Greece. There's that, and so there's the Pink Ladies, like you said. There's the Scorpions, and then there's the Cycle Lords.
I feel like they're a minor part.
Oh. Well, no, I don't think he was any of those things.
Sorry.
He was just a genuinely nice guy, and we kind of spent a bit of time together, and then I hazard to say I was probably the youngest of, you know, my family, but I'd grown up in a fairly adult world, so I was fairly mature for my age. I always say to Richard, because of course we went on to have two girls, and I always say to him, how would you feel if one of the girls brought home a 21-year-old when like they're 15 now? He goes, oh, no, there's no way that would happen. But I think it's sort of melded into that whole perspective that, you know, my mum and dad were like, oh, well, he's from the church, so he's a nice boy, and, you know, we're okay with that. Like that sort of all seemed okay.
So he like pick you up from school in the car? You feel like you were cool?
Occasionally. He taught me to drive, which is always a bit hysterical. I think we always used to end up at Tarrant Point Bowling Club afterwards because I'd really razzed him so much that he needed to have a beer.
I'm so stressed after this.
Yeah, I think it was. But yeah, so look, yeah, I mean, really, I don't remember much of a time without him in my life. So, yeah.
That's nice. When did you guys end up getting married then?
So we waited. Well, actually, we had a breakup after school. When I finished school, we sort of had a bit of a period of time that we weren't together because he was adamant that, you know, I needed to find myself and he didn't want to interfere with that. My parents were delighted because I think they sort of had this, you know, it's really great you've done that church stuff, but now it's time for you to sort of experience life a little bit. So it wasn't that they didn't like Rich, it was just more that they were like, okay, well now you'll go and live your life. You know, you'll travel and you'll experience life and you'll, you know, do all of those things.
And did you?
No, no. I went. I spent, you know, the 18 months. I think it was 18 months. Maybe it was less than that. It was sort of, you know, we broke up, but we didn't break up. We were still in church circles together.
Yeah.
When we were by ourselves, we still felt that connection. I mean, it was the biggest joke. I probably spent the whole 12 months, 18 months begging him for us to be back together. And, you know, eventually we just kind of said, yeah, well, that probably makes sense. And because we're pretty much together anyway.
Yeah.
I think everybody was just a bit like, are you guys together or not together? Because like you just like appear like you're together all the time. So, yeah. Yeah. And we married. We'd been dating for 6 years. So I was 21, Rich was 27. And yeah, we were, like I was young, but it was just a really lovely time because I felt like we were now establishing our own Christian home, which we hadn't had because he didn't come from a Christian home either. And I just remember, I just never looked back. It was just such a lovely time to kind of feel that sense of like now we start our own kind of life, our own family, our own home, where God is at the centre. So
that's nice. That's nice. I mean, I feel like a little bit similar because like both Karen, my wife, and I come from non-Christian families, so it's a similar thing. You're like, time to start a dynasty. And then so you said you had 2 daughters.
Yep, we do.
Did you? Sorry, I was just laughing. Did you move anywhere did you move to Sylvania when you got married?
Yeah, we did. We did. Richard lived in Banksia when we were dating because his auntie had a house and it was sort of looking like we might have moved there when we first got married, which, you know, that all sounded good, but sadly auntie died and the house had to be sold. So we found a unit in Sylvania to rent and so we stayed in Sylvania.
You can't take the girl out of Sylvania, but you can take what is it? Yeah. Take the girl out of Sylvania, but you can't take Sylvania out of the girl.
That's exactly right.
So sorry. We're talking about your daughters. Can you tell us about them?
So I have the beautiful Hannah, who is our eldest. She is 24. She is a high school TAS teacher. TAS. So she...
Tasmanian Devil?
No, it's technology and applied science. So actually she's a food tech teacher. That's her major, but I mean currently this is her first year out full-time teaching. She works at St George Christian School. And
so does my wife.
Yes, I remember you saying that before. But she basically, I think, you know, she's teaching food tech, but she's also teaching wood. I think she does, you know, a bit of digital stuff as well. Yeah, but she's lots of fun, and just we adore having adult children in the house. Like, it's just special. We really we love spending time together. I just feel so thankful to God for that. Like, just really get on and have great relationships. So so that's Han, and she goes to Park Road at South Carlton. That's her home church. So we raised the girls at Sylvania, but both of them, by the time they were sort of hitting late high school, were kind of keen to find their own churches and find their own feet. Yeah. And I think Rich and I both felt very strongly right from the beginning that we wanted them to own their own faith. Yeah. That we didn't want it to be about the fact that, well, they're a Christian because, or for them to be making statements like, well, I'm a Christian because my parents are Christians. Like, we go to church, like sort of coming on our skirt tails. We were really excited at the prospect, but we said to her, because of course she was the first to go, that we just said, the only thing that we ask is that you make yourself accountable to somebody at that church to say, I'm here. Like, look around, but once you make a decision, make yourself accountable to somebody at the church and get involved.
And commit to the local church.
Commit, like get involved in some sort of ministry service so that it makes you connected to community. So really thankful that she has done that. And then we have Charlie, who is our 21-year-old daughter. And she is a gorgeous girl too. She's just got, they're very different. And we often kind of go, wow, isn't God amazing that, just such different personalities.
I think it's my favourite part of having kids.
Yeah.
How different they are.
Yeah. It can be challenging because you have to parent them differently, and you have to kind of work out what works with one and what works with another. But we're very fortunate because both Rich and I get the girls in different ways, as in one is more like Richard and one is more like me, and so we get the way that they think and we kind of relate that way. But so Charlie's in her final year of communications and media at Wollongong.
We've had a few of them.
So
a few of those.
She's not quite sure what she's going to do with that next year, but she's got she's got a real creative flair. So I think, God will use her differently. So that's good. And so she has a long-term boyfriend, and they met at school. They now go to Gymea Baps.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm sort of involved in youth ministry there. And,
What do you think that God has taught you about being, I suppose, first of all, a wife and then a mother?
It's hard work.
Yeah.
On both fronts. I think probably the most challenging thing, being a mum, the most challenging thing I've done in my life, in many respects. I think I've kind of learned over time that your children are a gift from God, and you have to entrust them to God. That, we can worry about all of this stuff that goes on for them, health or trouble with friends or what they might do with their lives or how, but I think, ultimately you have to recognise that they are a gift and they are God's children, and He will guide them and protect them, and you really need to be committed to be praying for them and committed to actually walking your faith in front of them.
That's important.
I think that's kind of, I think we've always really prioritised church and being involved in the church community, and I hope that modelling that has been an influence on them. But I think also Yeah, I think it's probably. I think you learn a lot of humility as a mum, as a parent. I think because I was an early childhood teacher. I got this covered. I know
Been
what
training
to do.
for this.
I know what to do with kids. I know what to. I'm going to bring this baby home from hospital. I'm going to get her into a routine. We're all going to be smooth sailing. Oh my goodness, so not the case. I think, so out of my depth in terms of, sleeplessness and, a baby that didn't feed well and didn't sleep well and was super active and, I'd go to mother's group and, everybody else's babies were sort of still like this and Hannah was upright and moving around the room, checking what was going on and, so I think, humility was a big thing. And in terms of marriage, look,
Your early childhood training helped you?
Yeah, could have really helped with that. No, I think we really grew together, and that was it's been it's challenging. But I can honestly say I think your love grows for each other, but it grows in a different way. It's not all that romantic love, but it's that deep. Love and commitment to actually wanting the very best for that person and wanting to put that person before yourself and wanting to see them thrive and grow and I guess ultimately be happy, but, I feel really just thankful because like I said, I don't really remember a time too much without Rich being in it, and I'm just really thankful for him and thankful. And look, we've faced some immense challenges, and not necessarily, not in our relationship so much, but in peripheral things around us that have happened in the family. And I just know that we've got each other's backs, and I know that our girls have seen that modelled as well.
Yeah.
And I always say, I read this thing once about, for girls, their father is the model of what they should expect from a future partner. And I always say to them, man, I said, your future partners have got a big standard to live up to because in the way that he also treats our daughters, because, that's part of it as well, the modelling of, loving your daughter and modelling to her that love in different ways. And I really feel, because they're the first man and the greatest model of what a male should be like in a daughter's life. So, just really thankful that they've had that model, and he's pretty special.
Well, that's really nice to hear that. I was just going to say, we talked about before, and the only time I cried on the podcast was when Anthony was talking about his father and son. Now you're talking about that, I'm like, oh, you're going to make me cry again thinking about my daughters now. But
that's okay. It's okay to cry.
Yeah, thank you. That's the things that makes me want to cry the most, are my children.
Yeah, absolutely.
I so struggle with them growing up.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Can I tell you on this end of it? It's actually great.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I love it.
That's nice to hear.
I love it. We've got young adult daughters, and we love spending time with them.
Yeah,
and we've just been away on a family holiday and to Thailand, and it's just so lovely. And hopefully, I think that they would say, but I have other friends who say, what you do is not normal, And I say, well, what do you mean? And they say, well, what goes on in your kids' lives. And I'm like,
I feel that's a good
'Cause
thing.
I
Well,
wanna
we
be part of
talk.
it.
Yeah.
Like they
You want to be there.
They tell
Yeah.
us stuff, and
Yeah.
they tell us stuff about their friends. And when they come home, we ask them, you know, like, how was church? Who was there? Who did you talk to? I mean, Richard gets in trouble because he's like fires questions like, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and the girls are just like, stop, enough, you know. So he's tentative, but I seem to be able to ask
Get away with it a bit more.
questions, and but you know, we know what goes on in each other's lives, and we're also really open with them about what's real in our lives and the struggles that we have and the difficulties that we face. And I think as a result of that, I hope that they will be stronger women as they go forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's great when they're little, but I can say I love it when they're older.
That's
They're
cool.
just
Are
really.
you prepared for them to leave home?
Ooh. Look, I think it's going to come sooner rather than later because they're both talking about it.
We get rid of these boomers.
Yeah. I keep saying,
You'll
you'll miss us. You will miss us. But then there's a part of it that, I'm excited about a new chapter of life. And, I think, God will have other things for us to be doing, and I don't think they will be far away. I know they'll be home for dinner at least once a week, or wanting to get something out of my pantry because they can't afford to buy food, or they'll be needing something. Or, alternatively, they'll want to meet us for coffee on a Saturday morning because we always go for coffee.
And you'll pay for it.
Exactly right, Brayden. Yes, the bank
Hey,
of...
Mum, do you want to come out for lunch?
Yeah, the bank of mum and dad. My husband keeps telling me it's going to close, but he's just such a family man. I know that if my daughters even just looked at him sideways and said, Dad,
All right.
all right, yes, look, do you need anything? So, I don't know that I'm prepared, but I know that I'll be all right when I get there.
Yeah.
So,
That's the thing. Like, I just look back at photos. I'm like, oh, they're so young. Like, kind of go back there. Kind of just make that period of life stay there. Anyway, I need to make a correction.
yeah.
The gang of the main characters in Greece was the T-Birds.
Uh-huh.
So you were right. But then there's
I knew
the
it
other
was
ones.
some sort of birds.
And then, but then there's the other gangs that were like, what was it?
The Scorpions.
Scorpions, because they're a local gang against the T-Birds and the Cycle Lords.
Yeah,
You're just like, this is the thing with like all high school shows, right? They're all like,
in their 40s.
they're all, they're all so old. I was on the plane. I was saying, I was in America, coming home on the plane from America. Someone's watching 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger looks about 30 in that film.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to ask you, I suppose, a couple more questions though. Is you said that you grew up at Sylvania, were there for such a long time.
Yeah.
What ended you coming up to choosing to come to Soul Revival instead? It's just
I'm going to do something very sneaky and go turn the oven on because I'm cooking dinner.
Okay, you go turn the
on
oven on.
Friday.
We'll keep talking.
Cooking dinner right now, so I'm just going to go.
And it smells so
just
good.
going to go turn the oven on.
You
So
come
good.
back, no worries.
I'll come back.
Yep.
I think for Rich and I, we the girls had both gone from Sylvania to their own churches, and they were settled and established there. And we'd been at Sylvania, well, I'd been there 38 years coming up, and I was involved in ministry there, like quite involved and ingrained, but I don't know that I saw a way of getting out of it. Not getting out of it, but I didn't see a way. I didn't see people that could continue on the ministry. So I think I sort of felt that sense of like, I have to stay. Whereas Rich was he was restless. He hadn't there was not a lot of people not a lot of men, not a lot of people that he felt that he could be himself with, or that he could actually kind of relate to. And I think just generally we were sort of looking towards the future going, well, what is it that we want to do? And I think we both felt a sense of, we are at a stage in our lives now where we don't have dependent children per se. We are able to dig in and get involved in things. We'd sort of hit a few barriers in that church community with regards to what we might or might not have been allowed to do. And we'd stayed longer than what we had planned to because that had been going on for quite some time. And we kept saying, well, we'll just stay and see how things pan out. But yeah, I think we got to a stage heading towards the end of that year. Charlie was finishing school, a lot of stuff going on, and we came a couple of times here. We didn't particularly church shop. We just had felt this calling to come and check you guys out. And so we came, and we just instantly felt that it was the right place. So it wasn't a hard decision in that regard. It was very hard leaving.
Yeah, would be.
It was very hard leaving. It was very hard telling people because we really felt like we were abandoning ship, and we felt that sense that people were kind of judging us on that and kind of looking at us going, well, what are we going to do? But, we'd really prayed about it, and we really felt that God gave us the prompting to do it. So,
yeah, cool.
with no regrets.
Yeah. And you come to Sunday morning at
We
Kirrawee?
We do. We come to Sunday morning at Kirrawee.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
So it's been, and look, we've had a tough few years personally, and also with COVID, and yet we still this is our third year, but we feel like this is our church home now, and we look forward to coming to church on a Sunday morning, and we love the community of people and the people that we've met, and the first time for a long time I feel confident to say to somebody who's inquiring about church, in my day-to-day life, like, come, we'd love for you to come along and check the church out and see. So I think that's been a really,
Oh, that's really encouraging to hear too. I think it's it's exciting to hear other people at church saying that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a final question?
Absolutely.
Because you've been very, generous with your life, telling us about your life. What do you know now as a Christian that you wish you knew when you were a younger Christian?
I think probably that every stage or every challenge or every situation that you find yourself in, God is preparing you for the next stage. So you don't actually have to worry about the next stage because God is preparing you for that.
Yeah.
If when I look back at different things, and in the midst of it, you are always, depending on what it is, you're always a bit thrown, and, your sails feel shaken up, and you don't really understand why or what but I can just so clearly see when I look back upon my life that God has done certain things in my life, and I've had certain experiences so that it prepared me for the next thing that I would have to do. And so I think it just gives me great comfort and great confidence that, I don't have to worry about things in the future because I know that whatever that looks like, God will prepare me for that in time for that next stage. And it's certainly, the next stage may not be smooth sailing, but I can trust that God will prepare me for it. In whichever way that he determines.
Yeah.
I may not like it, but I think definitely I think if I that would have been helpful for me to know that
Yeah.
in my past to sort of see going forward in the future. So
Yeah, that's really cool. Braden, do you have any final words before we
No
wrap up the
final
chips?
words
No.
of prophecy, testimony,
No.
personal reflection.
How did the oven go? Was it all right?
It's good. I just had to turn it on. Last time I started cooking the potatoes way too late. That oven takes forever. So I just had to turn it
it's
on.
a new oven though, so
Yeah,
it should be
It
better.
just still takes forever.
So what are you cooking?
So I've got
It's good.
24-hour pulled pork that's been on since yesterday.
Oh,
And then I'm just
Sorry.
cooking some potatoes to go with it.
That's why you got to come on
So
Friday
it goes
nights.
a bit further.
I think any time you come here, there's food, so it really kind of doesn't matter, does it?
That's a
No,
great
The
point.
breakfast
That's true.
spread, the
Oh,
dinner
yeah,
on
Lisa's-
Saturday
Lisa's
nights.
amazing.
I actually didn't know there was dinner on Friday nights as well.
didn't you?
So
There
We
you
had
go.
meals at all our gatherings.
the juggernaut
Every single
just
one.
keeps on going.
Every gathering saw involved there's a meal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As
you're right.
they
There's
should
food
be.
there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as
it's
there
great.
as there should be. I need to be fed when I come here.
No,
Also, I-
but you know what? I love it. It's just such a way of gathering people together.
Oh,
and
really?
it's
Yeah,
just
it really is.
so amazing. And you know what? I think for people coming to the church, when you're a newcomer, it's just such a great way of connecting with people.
Rather than
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
give them a biscuit. And
Yeah.
Say rack off.
yeah, well, I wouldn't say that, but you might. But yeah, it's like it's helpful for conversation. I
Yeah,
think that's what you say.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But I think it is time to wrap up the chips, as we like to say on the podcast. But I think, Amber, it's really been lovely to have you on the podcast and really enjoyed your insights. But and it was interesting that you were saying that like God's always preparing you for the next stage, because like just thinking about some of the things that you've told us, and I'm sure, unfortunately, we don't have time to hear everything in your life, but you're talking about like preparing you for the next stage is like you had that year 6 teacher who got you ready to become a Christian. And then what happened with your church, and then also with the early childhood teaching and all that kind of thing. Like it makes a lot of sense. And even when I asked you the question about, are you ready for the kids to leave? That's exactly what you're saying. You it's almost like I'll be okay because I'll be prepared for it. And I really got that from you. So that's been a real encouragement to me, that I think you wrapped up your life very well in that way.
I just didn't tell you all the messy stuff.
That's all right. We'll say it next podcast.
Yeah, director's cut.
Yeah,
part 2.
yeah, that's right. Extended edition.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
I know
for
that you were
having me.
saying that initially you're like, I'm unsure to come on, but you did a great job. So thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thanks. You guys make it very easy.
Oh, it was a lot of fun,
Yeah,
as
good.
always on Chip Lunch Podcast.
Thanks.
Keep listening. We'll wrap up the chips. There'll be another podcast out next week.
Yeah.
And this is episode 56 of Chip
Wow.
Lunch Podcast.
Wow.
So we're
getting there.
we're getting to 100 when
Mm.
and God is episode 100. So
Awesome.
it might only go for 5 minutes, but we'll see. Anyway, thumbs up if you want to be on episode 100 on YouTube. Thank you again, Amber. Thank you, Braden. We always like to finish with a one way, if you so wish.
One way.